your life is such that it's tough to come up with a proper starting point. So let's go back to the date of your birth, if we can.
All right.
1924. Tell me a little bit about your birthplace and your family at that time.
I was born in the Bronx, 1924, in the Royal Hospital, which was on the Grand Concourse of the Bronx. You know, that's the main street, main thoroughfare. I went to PS 46, which had all kinds of children. They had Irish, they had Germans, they had Italians, you know, and I really got to know all the different type of people. Originally, my neighborhood was mostly Jewish, you know, so I went mostly Jewish children, you know. But I was pretty kind of interested in politics. That was a different era, you know, where Nazism in that area was, even in the United States, you know, a lot of anti-Semitism in the United States prior to the war. You had the German-American Bund that used to march, you know. Well, they tried to march in the Bronx, but they got slammed when they come up there. When my father came back, we moved to a better place, you know, to a private home up in the Bronx, right next to Stewart Clinton High School, up on Marshalloo Parkway, it was called. I lived there for a couple of years. Then we moved down to 161st Street in the Bronx, which was next to the Yankee Stadium. I think we moved there in 1938, 39, and that's where I went to the Army from there.
That's the next step. You went to the Army very early in life. Can you remember?
Well, I went to the Army when I was 19 years old. I just turned 19.
Tell me about the decision.
Decision?
Yeah.
Well, originally I had gone to Ohio University for the first semester. Then I knew I was going to be drafted. So I wanted to volunteer, but they wouldn't take any volunteers. So they had a situation where they called it voluntary induction. So I volunteered for the mountain infantry, the ski troops. This was a special outfit that trained up in Leadville, Colorado.
And what did you do there?
Well, I was a grunt. I was a rifleman. I was just a PF, you know, a plain infantryman.
And what was that like?
Well, it was hard, you know. It was cold. It'd get 30 degrees below zero up there. I spent about a year over there.
So you trained for a year.
Trained for a year.
You're 19 years old.
Oh yeah, right.
And where is the war at this point?
Well, the war it was 19. I went into the Army in 1943 in March, and that was a regiment, each regiment to make up the division. It was a light division. It was 10,000 men. The heavy division was usually 15 to 16,000. You know. I saw a picture called Air Force. It kind of made me think I want to go in the Air Force, you know. So
But you're in the Army.
I was in the Army.
Okay.
In those days, the Air Force was the Army Air Force. There was no Air Force.
Okay.
Yeah. I decided to become an air cadet. I want to be a flyer.
Had you ever been in an airplane at this point?
I'd never been in an airplane.
But you wanted to be a pilot?
I wanted to be a pilot.
Okay.
I used to like to fly model planes when I was a kid, you know. That's the closest thing I came to an airplane. It had a glamour to it, you know. And I figured I got tired of walking in the infantry, so I didn't much anyhow. So I transferred to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, to wait what they were going to do with me. Whether they were going to make me a pilot, navigator, or bombardier. A directive comes through from the Air Force. We don't need any more pilots, navigators, and bombardiers. We need gunners, aerial gunners. Either you become an aerial gunner or you go back to the infantry. So I became an aerial gunner.
And how do you train for that? Do they put you up in the plane?
You go up the plane and you shoot targets, you know, that's pulled by other planes. And after that, to make a long story short, I went to Lincoln, Nebraska, I think, to pick up my crew, where I met my crew, another 9 guys, you know.
So you would be with the same crew on the same airplane.
And then we transferred to crew training at Ardmore, Oklahoma.
So tell me what's happening in the war at this time when you
I mean, when I was in Kearney, Nebraska, D-Day occurred.
Okay.
And they invaded.
So just before you actually went over.
Yeah. D-Day was June 6th, and I went over in August.
And what were you feeling as you were traveling across the Great Pond to go join the battle?
Well, it was kind of, I liked flying over the ocean. In those days it was 4-engine prop plane, you know. I think we had a problem with the engine going over, you know. And my engineer, he got all excited. He was ready to commit suicide, you know. He thought we were going to go down in the pond. And we finally ended up, I remember going over Galway Bay, you know, and looking over the island. I was glad to see that. And we landed in Ireland, you know. Subsequently got rid of the engineer because we couldn't take him. I went to this base, and I was there about a month. I only flew 3 missions.
And neither one of those, any issues, no problems?
No, we got hit by flak every time.
You did?
Yeah, we always got hit by flak.
Okay, so you're flying, and the first time that flak hit your airplane,
Yeah.
what's going through your mind?
Well, he was pretty scared, you know. Yeah, pretty scary. We never got hit by fighters in those 2 flights. But on the 3rd mission, we got hit by 300 fighters. It was the last great effort of the German Air Force. In 2 days, they knocked down 90 planes, American planes. Then I bailed out. The ship caught on fire. We got hit by all these fighters. I think I got one. He came straight in on me. I was a tail gunner. And I think I hit him. I thought it'd go down. But we got hit by so many fighters, and I heard a terrific explosion behind me. There's a hole big enough I could have jumped out of. And I saw my radio operator and my bull turret cover bailing out. Of course, the intercom was knocked away. The oxygen was knocked away. So I jumped out the escape hatch and pulled my chute. Nothing happened. I said, you better pull harder. And they did. And both my shoes came off from the jolt. But they came fast, let me tell you. They were all around us. We were escorted by P-51s, 51 Mustangs. They were engaging them. And then the planes were going down all over the place. You know, fighters were going down. Bombers were going down. When a B-17 goes down, it looks awful. They were so helpless, you know. They turned black. You see guys bailing out, you know. Some people got out, some people didn't get out. I jumped out. That was it. I landed in an open land somewhere, and they didn't pick me up till about an hour later. There was nobody there. I didn't even see any of my crew members.
So of your crew, you're the only one that you're essentially alone at this point.
Yeah, I was alone. But then they took me, when they caught me, they took me into a little town, and the Gestapo, Heimstaatspolizei, that's the home police, which is Gestapo. The head of the Gestapo starts interrogating me. He says, "Was ist dein Name?" He says, "What is your name?" I tell him my name, rank and serial number. And he starts asking me where I come from, this, that. And luckily he didn't look at my dog tag. Because if he looked at my dog tag, I wouldn't be here today. Because on the dog tag it said H for Hebrew. Catholic had C for Catholic. So they could bury you, you know, the way you were buried, you know, according to your religion. Luckily he didn't look. Some guy took a Luger and put it on my back and said, "March." He took me to the Luftwaffe base. They marched me to Luftwaffe, then they took me by train to Berlin. Then they marched us through Grand Central Station of Berlin at that time. I don't remember the name of it. The people wanted to kill us. They marched us through the Germans, yeah, in the station. It was hockey sticks and umbrellas and anything. I was scared then. I think I was more scared than any time in my life that they were going to hang me. But I was saved by the German guards. The German guards did their job. We took the train to Frankfurt, which was the interrogation center. Then they interrogated me. And from there, they sent me to...
Well, what happened in the interrogation?
Well, they start questioning us. They put me in a hot room and turned up the heat on me. You know, pretty hot. And they took me out after a while and started interrogating me and started asking me questions. And I wouldn't give them too many answers, but they knew pretty much all about me. They knew where I came from. They knew which high school I went to. Germans were very sharp.
But no physical abuse?
No, didn't have no physical abuse, and not in Dulag Luft, no. But then they transferred me to Stalag Luft 4. It was like a punishment camp, for flyers. I had about 8,000 flyers. 2,000 RAF, and the rest Americans. When I got to the camp, we went by railroad on a boxcar, and we were on the road for about 3-4 days. We ended up at the camp in East Germany. And the minute I came to the camp, I knew I was in trouble. Because I had these dogs around, And there they worked me over a little bit, One guy punched me, He came at me with a knife. He wanted to kill me. You Schweine Jude, he said to me, you dirty Jewish, I'm going to kill you. You'll never leave here alive, But I want you to know that 10% of the flying crews of the United States Air Force were Jewish. And we only represented 1% or 2% of the population. Combat crews. People think the Jewish people didn't fight. They fought. I stayed in that camp. There was very little food. We used to, once in a while, get Red Cross parcels. The Germans kept them for themselves. And they would contain Spam and cigarettes and things like that, That was the only time we had really something decent to eat, And all we thought about was food. No sex, no women, no nothing.
So all the conversations in the camp were about food?
Food. That's all they cared about, food. Well, I stayed in that camp until February 6th, and they marched us out on the road. And we went on the road for 2 months. Midwinter, the coldest winter on record. We sleep out in the field. We sleep out in the barn if we could get, I remember I started out at the end of the line. And the first night I didn't get in a barn. There's no room. I sleep outside. But my training in the 10th Mountain Division probably saved my life, the training I had, living outdoors. And I used to sleep out 6 weeks at a time sometimes in the mountains, Finally, toward the end of the March, somewhere in March, maybe April, I got sick, and I laid in a barn for about a week or two. And I stayed there about a couple of weeks, and the British came and freed me. The British armored forces. I remember the name of the guy, of the captain. He come in and he says, Captain H. Bonham Carter of His Majesty's Royal Armored Forces. Men, you're free. And from there, they took me to a hospital to Belgium, the British. And then I went to an American hospital and stayed there a while. And I went to Camp Lucky Strike. And I took a boat home.
What was the worst of the moments during that entire time?
The march. It was very hard. We lost, according to intelligence, we lost 1,500 men.
And they would just get sick and die, or would they get
died
shot?
Of malnutrition and get shot.
After all these years, and you look back, and you think of the most notorious of characters maybe ever in world history, in Adolf Hitler. What's your thoughts?
Well, he was a mad maniac, maniacal genius. He was absolutely a genius. He took over the minds of the German people. What was he? He was a scorned artist. He was a spy for the German army, intelligence spy, spying on labor units. What brought him to power? Goebbels, all these fellows. They hated Christianity. They hated Judaism. After Judaism, they started going after the Catholics. And then they started going after the Protestants. They hated that. They believed in the Nordic psychology. They believed in the Superman. They believed that the Germans were Supermen. They found out that they weren't.
So you are now in the hospital, you're recovering,
Right.
you come back home, but you're still pretty sick at this point.
Yeah, I was sick, yeah.
And how did all of that translate into the art we're seeing here?
I really don't know.
How old were you when you started?
I started doing artwork when I was 71 years old.
So when you started to do your artwork, did you surprise yourself a little bit?
I don't know, it's just an inspiration, you know. I guess I had it in me all the time, you know. I was always envious of people that could draw. Of course, I had a setback when I was a young boy. When I was 7 years old, I got hit by a taxi cab. And it changed my personality, they say, you know. They say I think I was a right-hander, and I became a left-hander. And I remember I was very excellent at school. I skipped, you know. But after that, I wasn't so good at school. When I came back from the Army, I went to college for 2 years at Hunter College in the Bronx, which was an all-girls school.
Good idea.
And I majored in lunchroom. And had a lot of fun there. And I learned something. And then I got married and I went to work. That's why when I went back to college, the VA sent me back. It happened accidentally. I went to the VA and some fellow was cleaning my teeth. He says to me, he said, you know, he says, you're entitled to go back to college. I said, kid. I ended up with a master's degree I graduated cum laude, a master's degree in interdisciplinary studies, and a BA in liberal arts.
Looking at your art, there's a wide range of...
Yeah.
Give me a little history of it.
It stems out of me just like that. It's abstract impressionism, I call it.
As you look at it now, are you surprised to see
Yeah,
your life in art?
I'm surprised that it looks so good. I can't believe it. I can't believe when I finish a painting that it looks like that. Because I really don't think I had that talent to do it, you know.
Well, why the Egyptian art?
No, I told you, it's something in my collective unconscious must stir me on. Maybe I said I was a sculptor in ancient Egypt.
How about today's civilization? With all that you've seen, all that you know, where do you think we are now?
I think we're in a very dangerous situation. I think we're at the threshold of the abyss. What's going on today with the weapons of mass destruction, which are very dangerous, and the ease of obtaining them by radical elements throughout history, throughout the world, very, very dangerous. One hydrogen bomb can kill 2 million people in New York City, maybe more. Now that's not a bomb like dropped on Hiroshima. That was a peanut. That was a little peanut. So the world has to get together. I don't think anybody should hold himself above anybody else. I think it's one world. It has its good points and its bad. I think so. All people are, are good. I meet all kinds of people that are very, very nice. Black people, white people. And this country is, has been the basis of that, put to use, let's put it. Because nowhere in the world did people get along that they do here, right? Christians, Jews, Muslims, etc. But we can't let the values of this country be deteriorated the way they are.
How about now as you look at your family, what they've accomplished, grandchildren?
Oh, well, I got a great family. All my children, my stepchildren, the step-grandchildren, and my actual grandchildren, they're all great children. They all gone to college, and they're intelligent and loving. Really, really great.